What's happening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mutant Mondays, the show where we celebrate everything X-related. The subject of this week's episode: which X-Men do you relate to and why? Now, obviously, this extends just beyond the world of the X-Men, as the world of Marvel's Merry Mutants stretches far and wide, and that is a product of having been developed for decades upon decades. With the development and expanse of demographics, you create and allow for the fans, the readers, to have any number of characters to connect with and relate to for different reasons. It might just be one character. It could be multiple characters as you pull something like, oh, you know what? This character here contains these traits, and maybe this other character has this other ideal that connects strongly with myself. So for this episode, I kind of want to throw out a couple characters, and I want this to be interactive. I want all of you to chime in with either some of the examples that I share, just for not only for myself, but just some general ones, and just some of the traits that might stand out amongst others, and then just kind of share all yours in the comments below. Because again, X-Men and just the mutants in general, just so many, and just think about there's all this time, all these stories in different forms, different media, from the comics, video games, animated series, and movies, for better or for worse, that have stuck with all of us and have created, even just thinking about the different characters that have been represented in each of those and how they've kind of been changed and altered amongst all of those and through time as well. And a couple of examples I want to start with are just some of the more popular leaders: Cyclops, Storm, Rogue, Wolverine. All of them have led at different points in time. And what's interesting about those few, amongst some of the others, are their leadership qualities and just how different they are, even just amongst themselves. Like Cyclops and Storm have fought for leadership at different times. Cyclops and Wolverine have led different teams, like Wolverine in their different titles. All New X-Men, Wolverine in the X-Men, Uncanny X-Men. And that was such a great period. And just thinking about their different ideals and what they were trying to do, Cyclops and Uncanny X-Men and Wolverine and the X-Men, just following their character arcs and what creators have done and how they've kind of just followed their character trajectories over the years. Cyclops has always been, I think he's been the character who's led the X-Men the most, and one of those traits is kind of, especially as his character has kind of developed in this last decade, and how he's kind of taken on so much more, and with that has come a lot of hatred, which is kind of par for the course. But you say, hey, why does this character get so hated? But he's also kind of taking on so much. Like, there's a lot on his shoulders. You kind of look at, okay, he's become the kind of leader of not only the X-Men, but a symbol of mutant freedom, mutant kind, and that is a lot. So think about just individuals in life, like, hey, either at your job, your family, you might take on a lot of there's a lot of burden on your shoulders, and you kind of feel that every day. Like, a lot of people who walk around who are stressed often are stressed because they have so much weighing on them from their own personal struggles, but also sometimes they're carrying families, like single parents out there, or young children of struggling families who have to grow up as someone who works in the schools and works in education. I see this a lot with some older kids at my school in recent years who've had to grow up faster than they should have to kind of carry some of the burden. Obviously, the kids I work with, they're not out getting jobs yet, but I can probably predict some kids who will, in a few years after they get to middle school, like, they're going to have a job, and they're going to be a significant breadwinner for their family and helping out with the household. Is that right? It's just kind of a product of, like, their lives and their families. So just imagine, like, just taking that on. I had a job early on, like just before high school, and I worked through high school, but I wasn't called upon to, like, kind of be such a significant part of it. It was just like, okay, you got to get a job. And, like, I knew a lot of other people people I went to school with, same age. Like, we all just happened to get our first job together, and I happened to be at McDonald's, which it was an interesting summer. It was cool because we already like go in with 5-6 of us working together. But I just think about a lot of people, and a lot of people who are probably watching this dealing with families and just struggles with just work-life balance and dealing with family issues, single parents. That's huge. Even just with COVID right now, or this past year, or over a year now, what that has done to family structures. And like, all right, you know what? People have lost jobs, lives. All of a sudden, you hit like huge financial struggles. Your familial structures have been altered through death or just commingling for the sake of survival, or separating for the sake of health and well-being, and that is a significant stressor. So just imagine a lot of people dealing with that. This is more than just Cyclops, but I was thinking about a character who has kind of dealt with that storm as well. And Wolverine, who's been around and seen a lot, Rogue, all four of those have dealt with their own struggles, and each of them has come into leading their different teams from, and then kind of carried a different perspective to each of those, so they have a different outlook. Like, all right, you know, I'm going to lead this way, I'm going to interact with my team this way. And again, kind of going back to another, touching back on another episode where I said the X-Men are more of a family unit. So they're like interacting like that. It's still like family. So it's not like just a hard ass leader, but like, hey, like we've been like most of the time you're dealing with a team comprised of characters you've been around with for some time. Now, in real world, it's been a couple of decades, but within the fictional world, what is time? And another trait, for lack of a better word, that readers might connect with is the idea of identity and finding your place within the world. These are just, I feel like they've always been just strong themes especially within works of fiction, and coming to think about coming of age stories. And another callback to one of the previous episodes, Mutant Mondays, I talked about some of the young characters, Jubilee and Kitty, being young, and those being great entry points for younger fans getting into comics or just the world of X-Men and superheroes, and how I think they were great entry points and role models for young girls, especially young girls, young women. But that extends beyond them as well. I just think those are two prime examples. So you think about a lot of characters, again, coming of age stories, and a lot of people who you talk about elementary age and teenagers, like just coming up in the world and just being lost and not sure who you are, who you're going to be. Obviously, at a certain, like when you're young, you're not going to have that really develop. You might be questioning it, but there's no rush to find that. But some people will be looking into that. So look at Kitty and Jubilee, like just trying to find a place, and even probably more in the comics, because in the anime series it was just Jubilee and she was the youngest one, and people could connect with her. Like, hey, she just developed, or finding out, or she's just seeing her mutant powers develop, and now here she is thrust into this world. You got the Sentinels, the X-Men, mutant registration, her adopted family. Where does she fit in? She's not human. She goes to the arcade. All that stuff gets messed up. But then in the comics, obviously, even to a wider extent, and even now, especially with this last decade, we've seen new mutants being created, young characters, and like, all right, we've had young X-Men, different, like the New Mutants, several new X-Men and young X-Men series. So tons of creators, tons of characters, the Hellions as well. All these characters finding a place within the world, within not only the X-Men, but just society at large. And that's huge. Like, it's like characters who just might be lost, and oftentimes even within comics, like following a dream, or falling in with fellow characters who might be looking to find their way, or just following a dream. Like, all right, here's somebody with, you'll get Professor X, Magneto, and even Cyclops and Wolverine, as they've led, like, these are characters like with experience, like, all right, I'm gonna follow them and hopefully find my place within the world. Or even partially connected with identity is being when those same two characters like Jubilee and Kitty being two characters who I feel like you could say have a lot of heart. They could be like, oh, you know what, they're the heart of the X-Men. Like Jubilee in the X-Men series, she became basically a foster mother for this young child. So all of a sudden, dealing with vampirism and being a foster mother out of nowhere, I can't even remember the full details of that, but like, hey, here's a whole new element of this character. Look at her character path again, her trajectory over the years that she's grown, and she's not the baby of the X-Men anymore, but we still look at her like, hey, you know what, she's just a character who's full of heart, pixie as well. And I feel like the X-Men have, I just think about this picture as well, just so many characters here, and the young girls and just being strong girls and strong women as far as wholly developed characters. And I think that's just huge, and it works in favor of not only the fictional world, but just for pulling in and maintaining fans and keeping fans connected through just their minds, hearts, and imaginations and emotional. So I think that's just another byproduct of strong characterization and development. But a lot of my examples have been some of the more popular X-Men outside of Pixie. I wouldn't say she's like hugely popular. I adore her because I think she's great. But there are tons, and I don't want to stick to just X-Men, but you look at even other characters who have started on the wrong side of the law or the wrong side of history and have kind of switched sides. And going back to that familiar aspect is second chances. So look at all the different characters who have been X-Men or part of X-Factor, X-Force, and all the different teams who weren't necessarily out on the side of good, but who have kind of had changes of heart and have switched sides for the better, and sometimes it's gone the other way. So you can look at people with past and like, hey, you know what, you might have done some stuff in your past, but that isn't the whole of who you are. That isn't the sum of your character, and there are ways to kind of turn that around. You can turn that around and kind of look at the question of, do you believe in second chances? Do you believe that people can change? And as a personal thing, you have to look at for either just for yourself, do you believe that you can change? But then other people that you interact with, like somebody could have done you wrong, but have they made strides to kind of fix that with you if you've done something wrong either to other people or to society? Do you believe that you deserve a second chance? Have you worked towards that goal? And I think you have to admit, like, are you going the other way? Have you been do you feel like you've been a good person, but maybe like, you know what, this isn't working, and you have to turn that around, or just turn and you've gone the other way for whatever reason? Not judging here, just kind of have to throw out both sides of the coin here, just for the sake of, I don't know, honesty and transparency as you kind of look at yourself and just self-reflection, all this stuff. So a lot of characters within the world of the mutants embody that. So Gambit, and I think Gambit was a strong example as far as popular characters, because you look at the X-Men animated series, which again was a gateway for a lot of characters into the world of the X-Men. And one of the last episodes, Graduation Day, Professor X talked about him and how many times does the scoundrel have to prove himself to be a hero before he believes it himself, and his past with the Thieves Guild versus the Assassins Guild came back in a cool episode. So him and Mystique, who's been back and forth multiple times. We've seen Sabretooth be a part of the X-Men, and he's an absolute asshole. And Juggernaut, all these characters in Archangel through Apocalypse, well, Archangel and Sunfire, several other characters as well, through altered means, have faced the X-Men and have been faced against the side of good through different stories as well. So that's huge. And you talk about manipulation and what you can do when, like, your mind, again, through mind being altered, all that. But then those are just a few examples. So I kind of wanted to just throw out a few. Just kind of ran longer than I intended to, but just think about just so many other things that just kind of flew through my mind. So yes, what are some qualities and traits that different characters throughout the X-Men and the entirety of the world of mutants that you have connected with, which characters specifically? And it doesn't have to be just the mainstream popular X-Men, but again, think about all the other lower tier, for lack of a better word, characters who have just kind of touched people's hearts and minds throughout the decades of X-Men comics. And that's a lot of stories, that's a ton of characters. As I said before, with comics, there's bound to be something for every reading taste. So with so many characters having been created and developed through just hundreds upon thousands of stories, there's bound to be multiple characters, not even just a couple, but multiple characters that you identify with for one reason or another, any different number of traits. So share those in the comments below. I want to hear it. Let's make this interactive and yeah, just kind of see where we all kind of lie. And so yeah, happy reading, happy hunting, happy collecting. This is GENOTHADRAGON. Thanks for watching and peace out.